welcome to this documentation of our research into the COIL project, Who Women Are in the Context of the Arts. This is going to be Group 7, which concludes me, Nicolas Bass, Fernando Cabrera, Dinto Lebolang, and Dludlu Clinton. This is a collaboration with students from Africa, which will cover the issues and the roles that women have in both Latin America and South Africa. So in this presentation, we will cover the brief research into the issues regarding women in Latin America and South Africa, as well as the gender data gap and ways of empowering women, as well as a creative statement, some concept mapping for the final designs, as well as some sketchings from some of the group members. So some of the issues regarding women include marrying and having children. They have to put their own interests aside for the sake of taking care of the family. In Latin America and South Africa in particular, one of the controversial roles that a woman is often seen taking on is to be one of the providers of the family, the caretakers of the family, caring for the children, and marrying, often sacrificing their own personal interests and dreams to dedicate their time at home to take care of children and cook food and whatnot. Women are often seen as inferior, and they fall under a lot of mistreatment and even in some severe cases, abuse. A woman's value is often diminished, and they often face discrimination or some aspects of misogyny where they, as stated above, they're usually demoted to the role of the primary caregiver for the family. One of the issues that has come up and part of the research is the cases of femicide, which is the act of manslaughter on a woman, mainly because of the hatred towards women. And 1 in 4 women will suffer the consequences of femicide, and much of the reasoning for femicide is centered around the fact that they are women, and it doesn't really have any other reason to it. They are killed just because they are a woman. Older women are at risk of facing poverty and violence compared to older men, and older women are more likely to be widowed less than men. They are less likely to remarry, and they are more likely to be socially isolated. And they can also face abuse just as much as younger women and girls. This abuse can be emotional abuse, physical abuse, and even economic abuse. And it can be at the hands of just about anybody. It could be a boss, a family member, or an intimate partner. And they may also face insecurities like food. With the growing poverty concerns, they may not be able to afford the food because of their economic troubles that they may face. And these issues can happen anywhere, which is an important note. These issues can happen just about anywhere, including America, but in other countries, they may not have the same consequences that, let's say, America does. Where if you mistreat a woman in America, you can face pretty hefty consequences. If you're caught abusing your intimate partner, you will be charged and quite possibly imprisoned. Whereas some countries, they may not really have a lot of dedicated policies or laws in place that aim to put a stop or slow down these acts of abuse against women. So now into the gender data gap. It's defined as information that is divided by sex, male and female, and it also includes data that affects both women and young girls. Gender data is meant to provide some insight on the differences in the well-being of both men and women, and having this information projected to the general public, it should accelerate the ideas of gender equality, where men and women are seen about as equal. They, for example, they may get paid similar wages. They may face the same projection of value, and you know, men and women are seen as equal. So gender mainstreaming is an approach to policymaking strategies that address common interests and concern among men and women. But gender is apparently not mainstreamed enough, which makes collecting data on the well-beings of both men and women, especially women, um, very difficult. Um, and some of the reasons why um, collecting this data can be difficult is because there is uneven coverage of gender-specific indicators, such as the relations between men and women, the activities that they may engage in, and changes in social statuses or financial statuses. Um, the gaps in data regarding women and girls, with many intersecting inequalities, and simply just not having enough available data that is quality and comparable and understandable from different countries, and data that can be collected over a period of time. So how do we empower women, or how have women been able to empower themselves? There are several offices within the United Nations, women in East and Southern Africa, that are set in place to integrate decision making with the participation of women figures, which some of these decision making practices include national planning and budgeting planning, demanding adequate services for women who faced violence and abuse, making women aware of technologies that improve productivity in agriculture, and possibly even other fields of work, and broadening women's participation in peace processes. And there are also prominent women figures and leaders in political environments and campaigns, as well as artists who call attention to social and political matters, most often regarding women or the rights of workers or the rights of children, and calling peace to certain social and political matters. So as part of this project, I personally, Nico Bass, want to collaborate on depicting the meaning of who women are in the context of the arts by creatively depicting the issues that women in Latin America and Africa face, which include the discrimination and abuse, through creative metaphors, as to not graphically and literally depict these themes of abuse, discrimination. And I want to create a way within these designs, a way of empowering women, possibly as a second meaning of answering the question as to who women are in the eyes of Latin America and South Africa, um, and quite possibly showing these female figures with dignity, possibly through detailed artwork instead of extremely metaphorical means. So some of the key words that I thought of initially when faced with trying to come up with a concept, one of the main words that I picked out was misogyny, which can be thought of as prejudice. Some of the things that we might think of when we think of the word misogyny is prejudice, workplace mistreatment. You may think of people yelling. You may see a hierarchy of power, namely men over women. We may see some kind of visual representation of little money, devaluing, possibly a lower social status. So how do we depict the um, the hierarchy between men and women? We could make women appear smaller compared to men if we want to depict a certain issue, like workplace issues where women have to work harder to prove their integrity, to prove their worth, for example. And ways of empowering women, or any other figure that has to do with this project. Some visual cues could include making a woman looking up towards the sky, making them look stronger, physically stronger, or possibly depicting a way of emotional intelligence. Maybe another visual cue could be a business suit, or face or fists pointing upward as a symbol of strength, and stuff like that. So these are some of the visual cues that I picked out when in my search, while I was thinking of a way of a style that I could adapt to, for whatever design that I choose to create. I picked out some of these visual cues from Latin American art and African art. I do quite like these styles because they're pretty simple, and yet they do have an artistic um, appearance that I do think is achievable, and I think it'll stay true to the country in which these into which these designs are aimed to please or aimed to entertain. So these two images are from Dludlu Clinton, who is aiming to adapt to a more realistic style of art, and these are some of the images that he came up with. So I'm assuming that he wants to create a piece of artwork that has a very realistic painterly style. And these are some of my sketches. In our meeting with our group on Thursday, we decided to start with the sketch on the left, which is aimed to depict a tree, which is a tree with deep roots and branches reaching outward to signify a deep-rooted feminism. And the person associated with this sketch is Dolores Huerta, who not only advocated for women's rights, but she also advocated for workers' rights. And the concept that we have in mind going forward is to have the tree positioned in a way where it's not immediately in the center, with a perspective kind of like a worm eye view looking upward to visually represent some kind of hierarchy or a sense of strength and power that signifies the outreach, that the effects or the messages that Dolores Huerta pushed to the world. These are some of Dludlu's sketches where he had some really interesting concepts. We decided to go with the second and third one, which is the one with the ladders and the fist growing out of the hair. The second sketch is a very stark visual representation of hierarchy, as well as a great metaphor for depicting the differences in how a man and a woman in a corporate setting move throughout their careers. The men typically seemingly have an easier way of growth and have more opportunities for growth, whereas a woman has to work harder and doesn't seem to nearly have as much opportunity for growth. Whereas the sketch for the fist growing out of the hair is meant to call attention to the discrimination and abuse that women face. And it could also, and one of the things that I thought of when I looked at the sketch is possibly a means of depicting strength, as the fist is pointing upward from the woman's hair. And yeah, and these are Dinto Lebolang sketches, which I think, in my opinion, these might be a little bit too literal. I don't think they have enough use of metaphors and visual cues to represent women's issues. The idea is pretty much clear through these visuals, but the purpose of this project is to to metaphorically depict whatever theme we choose to respond with to the question who women are in the context of arts. And um, I think there could be better ways of expressing whatever ideas she had in mind for this. I think the first one is meant to represent the abuse that women often face at home, whereas the second one is an act of nurturing children, which is a call to the women's role, typically, of taking care of children and being the primary caregiver of the family. And that concludes this slideshow. This has been a brief documentation of the research and some of the ideas that the group has going forward. And that's it. Thank you for watching.